Hi, it's Dew, and this is my Oregon book haul. So in this is our books, one from a Little Free Library. I unhauled all the books I brought to Oregon into Little Free Libraries and only found one, but good for me because I actually found a huge kind of score, which I'm going to talk about in a second, from a Goodwill, the one in Beaverton. And then I just went into the Multnomah Friends of the Library in the Portland Central Library with reckless abandon, and it's just really, honestly, shout out to that Friends of the Library. They do an excellent job, and I have been to many Friends of the Libraries now throughout the West, and yeah, they just do such an amazing job of curating a really cozy space with really well selected books that they choose carefully and rotate often. So let's start with the Goodwill haul. And some of these books actually are from well, actually two. So I know, let me finish a sentence for you. So in the Goodwill, for some reason, there was quite a few Europa editions, and not only were there quite a few Europa editions, they were books that I don't have yet. My Europa edition shelf is on the other side, and I'm gonna have to rethink it because it's over full now, and I don't know what to do about that, but that's for another day. I am just gonna talk about these books just a little bit. Normally what I do is just say why I grabbed it or what was interesting to me, but in the case of Europa edition, I grab it because it's Europa edition. It's just, there are a couple: Tin House, Europa edition, New York Review of Books, an archipelago that I just say, yep, I'll grab that book. I like the way they look. I like these sort of waxy covers. I love their French flaps, and generally they pick good authors. In any case, this is the second Damon Galgut that I have. The Promise is the other. I will be reading it soon, so maybe that will make room for this one because The Promise won the Booker, and so yeah, I'm going to be reading in September Booker winners, maybe shortlisters, maybe longlisters, because I have acquired credit collection now. All right. Anyway, this is The Strange Room by Damon Galgut, and I hauled it because it is Europa edition, and I don't know anything else about this book. Alicia Jimenez Bartlett and Dog Day. In this book, I believe we are introduced to a detective that she then writes a series of books about. I believe, like other books that I have on my shelf, which I need to get to, that aren't Europa edition. I think this is Barcelona. I think Barcelona is the setting. However, I think the ones that I have are historical, and this one maybe is more contemporary in regards to yeah, the setting of the book. In any case, this is translated from the Spanish by Nicholas Castor. I should stop trying to read in this light always. It just doesn't work for me. Anyway, Edwin M. Yoder, Lions at a Lamb House. It says on the front of this, a sly and delightful novel that tells us more than we might at first guess about real lions the size of Sigmund Freud and Henry James. That kind of sets up a vibe of this book that I might have to be in the mood for, but it does make me quite curious. I believe that this book came out in like 2017, as is the median. Yeah, nope, 2007. It's a little bit older. In any case, I believe Yoder, Edwin M. Yoder Jr., as a Pulitzer Prize writer, but not for his fiction. Sandrine Collette, Nothing But Dust. This book vibe gave me very Cormac McCarthy. In fact, I think there's like All the Pretty Horses at least, or one of that sort of trilogy, the Border trilogy, has a cover similar to this. But alas, this is about France. This is a French author, and this book is translated by Alison Anderson from the French, and this book was published in the Europa edition publication in 2018. I'm interested in sort of like what feels like a French Western, for sure. All right, and then the final book that I got at the Goodwill. So yeah, I found 5 Europa editions. They were all for $3 or $4, and Oregon has no sales tax. So I couldn't believe my luck. Anyway, Return to the Dark Valley by Santiago Gamboa. This is a fantastic cover. This is a dense book, I would say. It's not got, well, over 400 pages, but it just feels dense, and I think it's going to be dark. It's got a lot of sort of darkness in its vibe. It's a swirling kaleidoscope of a novel, and I think this author is Colombian. Yeah, Colombian. So this is translated from the Spanish by Howard Curtis. I think we may or may not start in Europe, and then ties to Latin America, and I think there's some of this kaleidoscopes actually happening in Africa as well. The name is Return to the Dark Valley. So yeah, I guess I'll keep that under advisement when I choose this book. I do have, probably this book is the book about which I have the most enthusiasm to read. So we'll see if I can get to it during Latin American Heritage Month, which would seem to kind of thrust it into the pile of possibilities TBR. In addition, at the Multnomah Friends of the Library, I found 2 more Europa editions, so I got them for the exact same reason, but I'm also very interested. Look at this cover. This is All Your Children Scattered by Vida Umbueye Marese, and this is translated from the French by Alison Anderson. In this book, we have someone who escaped the Rwandan genocide and to Bordeaux, and then she has to return there. So already really sort of deep themes running through this, as far as like healing from trauma, diaspora, going back, survivor guilt. Those are all of the kinds of things that I can predict about this. I just look at this book and I know that, you know, I'm going to need another like Jeeves book or a cat book after I read this, but super excited to have it. And then finally, we have a book that I'm probably going to read closest to now, because although I haven't quite finished it, and I'm reading it out of its physical copy and just kind of slowly because it's nonfiction, I have The Orchid Thief, and it's informing me a lot about orchids and orchid kind of collectors cult culture that I find all of that information really compelling, and I think that it'll be a good partner to this book, which is called The Rarest Fruit by Gaël Bellem, also translated from the French by Hildegard Searle. And we have a botanist in this who is, this is based on a true person who is a botanist, and his name was Edmund Albius, a young Creole boy born into slavery whose extraordinary talent for botany leads him to revolutionize the vanilla industry. with his method of hand pollinating orchids. So you see this connection. It's also a not very big book. So we'll see. This is anticipated end of summer, moving summer into fall. Probably going to be read soon, but if not, then you'll forgive me. I got a lot of books to read. Okay, now just to this ginormous pile, and somewhere in here is the one book I got from a little free library, but these are the books from the Multnomah Public Library. I ended up getting a tote. I should have had the tote to show you in this video because I love their totes. I try to refrain most of the time because I have reusable shopping bags or whatever, and you know, consumer culture, but it's the Friends of the Library. It was a great tote. Anyway, I needed it to put all of these books, to be able to carry them across the street and do my book haul and Bloody Mary thing that I do, which is to review all of the books that I get off a giant haul with the person lucky enough to be with me. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. And in any case, I had to haul all of these books out of the bookstore. Stellar Find of the Director, which was in the 2026 International Booker shortlist. Yeah, it was shortlisted by Daniel Kilman, translated by Ross Benjamin. This book is talked about quite a bit in the BookTube, Bookstagram space, and this is the story of a director who wasn't quite making it, I think, in Berlin, maybe Austria. I know the director's Austrian, and then he goes to Hollywood, but he has to, and then he has to come home. He has to come back to now Nazi-occupied territory because of his ailing mother, and then he ends up sort of being part of the propaganda machine, kind of under duress, I'm to understand. That's the gist that I know about this book, having watched other videos. We'll see when I read it. Super excited. I have quite a few International Booker shortlisted books. So I'm thinking maybe I'll try to put them together. In the meantime, I will talk about The Passenger Seat by Vijay Khurana. And this is Indian, maybe born or Indian immigrant diaspora author in Australia. So I believe this is an Australian book. I'm trying to see if it was even published here. You'd be surprised how many don't get published in the US. In any case, it's a recent one, 2025, in which we are looking at, there are two people that go on a road trip. They decide to harass and bully some people on the side of the road. And it's from their POV, or the POV of maybe the partner who is sort of like caught up in this harassment or bullying. In any case, great cover, really good premise, super excited for this book. It's going to end up in the stack, so we'll see when I rediscover it in the future. This is the Little Free Library book, and this is the one that I'm probably least enthused about. Do I really like quirky books about affluence in LA? No, but this one just, I don't know, it just seemed almost a little campy. And it's called Lightning Field by Diana Spiotta, and I think there's, like, it's going to be a little bit camp and some social criticism about over, like, identity being just how you look or how you perform. That's what I get from this book. Again, going in the stacks, and we'll see when I get to it. Next, I have I Saw the Sky Catch Fire by T. Obenkaram Echwa, which this is shall I call it a classic, published in the 1990s by a Nigerian author who's, I think, telling the stories of maybe Nigerian men in smaller towns and what's going on kind of in the era. I looked, and one thing that kind of distresses me a little is this font is not great, and I wasn't able to find a digital or audio copy from my library, and I think I should have considered that before, paying $3 for this book. But maybe I'll be able to either read it or find at some point a copy. So yeah, in any case, that was maybe too much contemplation about how I can consume this book. I'm excited for this book. Of course, because of systems and power and privilege, Africa probably is the least represented continent of the major continents on my shelves. So I'm really always excited to find African authors and African voices. Next, we have Catalina by Carla Conejo Villavicino. I have recently just finished Undocumented Americans by this author, which was a nonfiction written kind of like in investigative journalism storytelling style. And I ended up really, really, really liking that book. So that's what made me want to pick this up. It was actually on my wish list in Book Outlet for the next $5.99 sale, but I found it at Friends of the Library, so even better. In this book, I think there's a little autofiction element in this, because coming to know this author's Villavicenció's life story from the nonfiction that I read. She was undocumented and then went to Ivy League school for journalism, and in this book we have a protagonist who is undocumented and going to Harvard. Okay. Well, in Oregon in December, I read The Matrix, and then recently when I was out in the wilderness in Oregon, I read The Vaster Wilds. So I was excited to find The Fates and the Furies by the same author, all by Lauren Groff, to kind of, I unhauled those books in Oregon, so to replace Lauren Groff in my collection. I actually do have somewhere around here Arcadia. So I do have one more of her books that I haven't read, and I've had Arcadia for quite a while. So sort of note to self while I'm doing this book haul video, I'd like to prioritize reading that one first. However, I've seemed to have abandoned any, like I've had this book for longer, therefore should read it first kind of measurements or management strategy. In any case, this book has a book 1 and a book 2. It's about a failed marriage, or about a long marriage, and then told from the husband's point of view, and then I think first, and then the wife's point of view next. And so it's looking at marriage, but it's also looking at, I think deeply, like how much women sacrifice and do that's unnoticed, unsung, and even criticized for the wrong reasons. Next, we have The Names by Florence Knapp. I think this book also has had a lot of hype in the booktube spaces. I think this is a 2025. Here we have a look at self-fulfilling prophecy and also like domestic violence, and how this is told. It's kind of in one of those sliding doors situations where a child is born and there are 3 suggestions of names given by mother, father, and my maybe sibling. And we then look at 3 different stories of if this child took that name, how their life would be different. Let me see. Oh, yes. She Made Herself a Monster by Anna Kovačeva. Yeah. This is vampire hunter in Bulgaria. So this is written in English, but this Bulgarian author got an MBA, I think, in New York, and maybe currently lives in New York. So all that kind of tracks with how the book industry grows. But but the setting of this is Bulgaria, and I think we get some like Bulgarian lore and myth tied into this. I know that there's sort of like maybe a vampire hunting element, and maybe a criticism of what was sort of used to manipulate folks. Particularly, I'm getting women. In any case, she made herself a monster. I'm excited. Spooky season. I don't really do spooky season, but you know, why not? Since I don't normally do it, why not do it a little this year? Super excited for Mr. Loverman by Bernardine Evaristo. Girl, Woman, Other is right here, and it will be read. It is run on my TBR, like potential TBR, several times. The most recent of which I think was for Women's Prize for Fiction when I was reading those in March. But because it was a Booker winner, it's going to be read in September or October. And I have a nonfiction, it's a memoir by this author as well. And then this story explores a man, it's a protagonist in his 70s. He's living in London and he's living a double life because he's closeted, and has been his whole life. And his wife suspects that he's cheating on her with another woman, but alas, he's had, from what I understand, maybe a long-running affair with a man. And it just sort of looks at the consequence of staying hidden as yourself, and or of living your life fully as who you really are. I have not read this author, but for many reasons of how I think her work will go, I trust her to do an excellent job with this story, and I am really excited to read that book. Last but not least, we have last year's Booker winner, Flesh by David Salai, and I don't have a whole lot of enthusiasm around reading this book, but it was a winner, and I am reading Booker winner, so serendipitously I found it for sale. It's a decommissioned library book, which for some reason I do like to find them that way too. I have to take off all the plastic and all of the stickers and things, but yeah. So that completes my giant stack of books. And next probably will be a review video, and then followed by, yes, the Booker winners that I have as my pile of possibilities to read in September. Until then, happy reading.